everyone. Welcome to the Daily Grind. My name is Kelly Johnson, your fun and friendly host. We are on episode 43, the very best one yet. Shout out to my podcast team, Ambiguous Network, and fellow pods on there, including UMAD Bro, the Sam Bustle Podcast, and GDP, Goal Driven Professionals. Where to find more about the network, head over to ambiguouspodcastsolutions.com. If you're interested in joining the network, reach out to Will and his team. So if this is your first episode with us, your seventh episode that you're listening to, or right on track with episode 43, we appreciate you following us on our podcast journey and sharing this episode with a friend, and give us a quick review and rating. Virtual high five for you in advance. So speaking of podcasting, creating podcasts and listening to them, a great time getting in touch with one of the best podcasters around the world. So today's episode, I get to talk to this new special guest to share his story. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Martin. I'll just say Martin. He'll introduce his last name later. But Martin is the podcast host of Watata, a podcast discussing everyday topics while having fun with his close friends and guests sharing their stories. He currently lives and works in the Netherlands. Overall, great person to have on our show today. So welcome, Martin.
Thank you very much, Kelly. Thank you for the great introduction. And yes, indeed, I have a very difficult last name. It's properly pronounced as ter Denge, but it's a bit much. We'll get to that in a bit. I'm 34 years old, by the way. I'm from the east of the Netherlands, and yeah, professionally, I'm a copywriter, and in my spare time, I'm a musician. I play the drums, percussion, and guitar. I use my computer to make music, and whatever time I've left, I dedicate to a language, and one language in particular, and that's Low Saxon. Low Saxon is a regional language in the Netherlands and in the north of Germany. So, and I do that by writing for the Low Saxon Wikipedia. I write columns in the local newspaper. I run a blog called Weltsprache, which means world language. And I make 2 podcasts, actually. So thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks so much for coming on our show today. You are a true daily grinder, as you can tell from the introduction. Lots of stuff going on, lots of great content, doing a lot of great things in the world out here today. So I guess first and foremost, how did you become interested in podcasting?
As I said, Low Saxon is a regional language, and it's not very standardized, so you don't have a standard English like standard English or standard Dutch or whatever. There's no standard Low Saxon, so there's this ongoing feud, if you will, about how to write it. And one of the voices that rang out was, well, you shouldn't write it, you should speak it. And this was around the time that podcasting really took off. So I said, well, yes, I want to preserve this language. I want to do something with it. I want to do it regularly. So the quickest way to do that is by just speaking it into a microphone, which is podcasting. So there you go.
Yeah, pretty straightforward, obviously. You have a background in writing, creating content, things like that as a copywriter. How did you become interested in that whole area? Did you have that interest as a kid or through school?
Like for the language as a whole, or I've always been into languages. I grew up speaking 2 closely related, so Standard Dutch and Low Saxon. But the Low Saxon bit was always a bit like you shouldn't do that because it's not good for you and all that. So there was a lot of stigma around speaking that language. While at the same time, my parents spoke it freely amongst themselves, and me as a sensitive to language person, I grew interested in English. So I started to learn English and traveled the world. Ended up in Ireland for a bit. That's where my outrageous accent comes from. And when I came back, I heard the people speak Low Saxon, and I thought, this isn't an ugly language. This is beautiful. Why are people saying this is ugly and we shouldn't do it? And this was a part of me. So people, indirectly said to me, a part of you is ugly and doesn't matter. And yeah, I felt like I should do something about that. And so I got into this. I started Googling it, of course. What is this language that I speak? Because it didn't even have a name. And then I discovered it's called Low Saxon or Low German in Germany. And there's a Wikipedia, and I noticed there's work to be done. So I decided to, give it my best. And I noticed that there's lots of things lacking from the way we tackle these things. So I started, well, I could complain about it, but I could also, pick it up myself. So there you go. And it got worse and worse. And yeah.
That's cool. So how many languages do you currently speak or can conversate with right now?
I think to a more or less proficiency, my two native languages are Dutch and Low Saxon, which are very closely related. I live close to Germany, so German is around the corner, literally. And I studied English, so there's English. And since I got into the history of Low Saxon, we used to have, back 500 years ago, there used to be a very big trading community with the Scandinavian countries. So I found out that I already speak half Norwegian. I only need to learn the other half because Norwegian borrows heavily from Low Saxon. So that's 5 languages, and I'm currently trying to learn a few more, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, that's awesome that you're able to communicate with a lot of different people and share your story, obviously, and build on your mediums, which is great. I think that's such a great accomplishment. I struggled a little bit learning Spanish in high school. I haven't taken anything in college, but I'm looking to build learning French again. I haven't.
French?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. That, of course, if you're living in the US, there's this general fear of languages, while in fact they make your life richer. And go for it. Really, French is a beautiful language. Spanish is beautiful. Every language is beautiful in its own special way. So go for it.
Yeah, and it's beneficial both from a career perspective, both personal and business.
Yeah, I've learned a different language, and now I'm talking to you at the other end of the world. So there you go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have a perfect example right here. So tell us a little bit more about your podcast and how you just start. You have 2 podcasts.
That's right. Yeah. Well, the first one I explained, of course, was it started from a feud. Like I wanted to, dole out the information like mad and tell people all about this beautiful language in this language. So I'm a bit of a language nerd. So it's on the topic of language, and not everyone who wants to speak a language is necessarily interested in, the inner workings of that language. They just want to use it to communicate to people. And so it quickly became very serious and very, thorough. And then I started thinking, well, there's a part of me who's very, lively, and I love to make fun and have good banter with people. And I decided I need to, perhaps start a second podcast in which we just entertain the people through the Low Saxon language. So we hit 2 flies in one swat, so as we call it. But kill 2 birds with one stone. I think that's the English expression. Yeah. Yeah. I asked my friend Herbert, we've been friends for like 25 years, and we were in a marching band together, and we both got married, and drifted apart a little bit. We didn't see each other as often as we did, but we always enjoyed the banter going on between us, and that's really a cultural thing that's ingrained in the Low Saxon language as well. It's very useful or very fit for banter, for having a laugh, and we just wanted to entertain people, have them have a laugh, and It also coincided with COVID-19, so there you go. Because I think it was about a month before the whole thing started, I said to him, how do you feel about, starting a podcast with me, doing a bit of banter, just having an hour of fun? And then COVID struck, and so the lockdown rules are a bit more free over here, so we're allowed to go out and meet as long as it's not more than 3 people at once. So we could, meet together and get together in one room, and we'd set up a microphone, and there you go. There's our podcast, and the entire first episode is about what should we call our episode, so or what should we call our podcast. That's what it's basically all about, and it really took off, and people loved it because. We presented it as being an hour of banter, an hour of, being together, having your general, your general conversation stuff, what usually goes on in Low Saxon homes if COVID wasn't here. So, usually the elderly, especially, they're in lockdown, they're quarantined, and they're, we can't get to them, especially my co-host. He did a bit of photography. He's a freelance photographer, and he did sort of a fundraiser where with a few photographers went out to the homes of the elderly, where he did photo shoots of the elderly with a drone. And they couldn't get out. He said basically it's like a prison for them, and it really got to him. And he said we need to do something, get their minds off things. So we started this podcast as a way of offering them some some time away from it all. Just some banter and some good stuff, and it really took off. So currently we're at I think it's about 1,014 listeners in just 7 episodes. So. Yeah, it really took off.
Yeah, definitely. I tried to listen to 1 or 2 episodes. I had to use Google Translate a lot, unfortunately, but I get to translate, the laughs and the entertainment. I love the audio clips and things that you add in. I think it adds a personal touch, and it makes me feel like I'm like in the same room as you, like you talking about it, or I can tell it's very cheery, upbeat, positive, which is what we need right now, having a positive mindset going into this whole COVID lockdown.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I think it's really important, and it's cool. It's like brand new, 7 episodes in. You're doing a really great job. So how did the Watata name came about? Was that something you brainstormed right away?
We were discussing what should we call it, and at one point during the first episode, my wife comes in and she brings us coffee, and I say "Watata," and it basically means what's that then? So it's a bit of a abbreviated form of what's that then, and you can use it for basically any situation, like what's that then? What are you saying? Or it's just a short form of a regular sentence you hear all the time. So we didn't decide on the name just then, but only after we hit the stop record button, then we said the name should be Watata. So
it's great. I love it. Like in your intros too, you guys you say it in different tones, and I think it just adds to that's the good branding, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you on the branding, the logo.
Yeah, and exactly. And the logo, I've made the logo myself, and I made it as ugly as possible. And it's really it really catches your eye, and it really makes you say, "What's that then?" Because it really represents nothing. It's just a blob. And I made it in 5 minutes or so, and it works like a dream because everyone who sees it says, "What's that then?" And some see the Playboy bunny in it, and I say, yeah, it's just like a whatever your frame of reference is, really, because because I've had some Americans on the Anchor.fm Facebook group say it looks like a hurricane symbol, but we don't get hurricanes here, so I'd never seen a hurricane symbol. And now that you mention it, yes, it does look like a hurricane symbol a bit, but not exactly. So it still applies like watata. And
we have to watch out now for you you're coming towards the US or something.
yep, yet another language to learn for you.
Yeah, exactly. I should start adding your language to my my checklist of languages I need to learn. Get on Duolingo or something.
Yeah, it's not on Duolingo. That's the it's not, and that's one of the reasons I'm so actively promoting its use, because people tend to think very badly about this language, and it just is. It's like any other language, and yeah, for some reason people feel very bad about it. So, and I try to make people feel better about it. And we've actually had some young people say to us, "It's great what you're doing," and actually, what the language is very beautiful, and I'd love to learn to speak it. So there you go. That's a positive side effect of this whole podcast thing. So that was lovely to hear from youngsters as well.
Definitely, yeah. I was just gonna ask, like, can you share with our listeners from your podcast, like, any really great content from people tuning in to your episodes, things of that? I'm assuming you've had a good amount of people with over 1,000 listeners reach out to you, telling you thanks for inspiring me, keeping me well, things.
Yep. Yeah, we actually had one man responding, like, he was always a bit of he wrote, his comments weren't always that positive, but he kept responding, and at the same time he said, well, you mentioned somewhere that this is for lonely people, and to be honest, I'm actually pretty lonely. So that was very heartwarming to hear that we had a positive impact on him, despite his his crankiness or whatever. Yeah, he was a bit lonely, and he just needed some contact. That was his way of reaching out, really. So that was really positive, and we've heard from people saying one of the subjects during the show is old words, because Low Saxon is a very old language, and we just pick out, we dig up a word that hasn't been used for ages, and we just discuss it and see if we can fit it back in the real world, really. And that's one point. And since the world hasn't stopped, new developments, new technology has evolved. We get games and all that stuff. And usually, what we do in Dutch as well as in Low Saxon is copy the original word in English. So we get a lot of influx from English words in Dutch and in Low Saxon. So there's basically two thoughts about that. You could say that's a good thing, because it makes our language, it renews everything. Or you could just say, well, that's just shameless copying, and we have a perfectly fit language to describe these things ourselves. But and we really made the youngsters, we asked them every week to think about something that you currently mention in English, like a game console, like the controller for video games. What would you call that in Low Saxon? There isn't a Low Saxon name for that. So start playing with that language, start developing your own vocabulary, and that's how you renew a language. You can be sentimental about losing old words, but you don't lose them for nothing. It just means that they're not necessary anymore. Like, for instance, if you have some technology, some farm technology, like from 100 years ago, current farming is totally different from what it used to be. So we don't need the jargon, the old words. We don't need them anymore. So that's a different way of thinking about it. But this is very technical stuff.
In regards to the old words and then having new words, because just the world continually changes, technology is improving. We need those words in our dictionary.
Right. And yeah, I think English is a beautiful language. I wouldn't have learned it otherwise. Yeah, and it's a very useful language. But yeah, it's just one of many. There's 7,000 languages in the world. So yeah, we're a bit in the Netherlands. We're very focused on getting our English right, while in fact we have other neighbors as well. So the German suffers from it. Our general knowledge of German is in decline. Our general knowledge of French is in decline, and all because we all think English is the world language, which it isn't, in my opinion. It's good to speak it, but it shouldn't be the only thing.
Yeah, definitely. I think language in today's age is used in. There's a lot of different languages out there being used in business and just in general in communication. That's why I think it's really important to branch out. If you're a listener on this podcast that only currently speaks one language at this time, I'd challenge you to learn another language. I think it's important.
Yeah,
It kind of
absolutely.
expands your network. You able to possibly achieve other goals that you thought you weren't in reach of. So I think it's really important. That's why it's on my objective list. I'm trying to do something one at a time. Don't make a crazy idea, but not anything's possible. To be honest, there's a lot of different resources out there to learn new languages.
Yeah, exactly. It really broadens your horizons. Like one famous philosopher once said, every language is a different window into the world, a different look on life. So if you want to, get a broader perspective of what life is like, learn from other cultures, learn from other people as well. And that's a very interesting way of looking at things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And even to being able to listen to these podcasts, The Daily Grind or Watata, if you're learning that specific language, it helps, increase and kind of understand watching TV, watching movies, reading, et cetera, things to help, improve your literacy to those languages that you're learning. So keep on grinding out there, daily grinders and such.
Yes, indeed. And we're social beings, right? We're humans. We need interaction, and the more people you get to know, the richer your life becomes. Especially if the barrier of language is taken away, if you open up to people, it really broadens your horizons, really. And currently learning my 6th language. As a goal, I set myself by the end of the year, I want to be having a basic knowledge of Irish, Gaelic, like the Celtic language. But that really is very hard, and I haven't really gotten any further than the absolute basics like colours and pronouns and all that. So it's a hard goal.
Really interesting. That's great. Yeah.
And I think it would interest a lot of your US listeners who believe they're somewhat Irish. So it's really a hard language to learn, but very rewarding so far.
Yeah, that's great. I can believe it. My first name Kelly, I believe is an Irish background, but unfortunately I'm not Irish. I did visit Dublin last year on a year.
Live there.
Yeah. So I want to go visit again. It was basically like a layover. I was there I was in there in the morning. I had to leave at night and I transfer over to Italy, but checked out the Guinness did the tour and walked around as much as I could, but definitely want to visit back again. But I definitely want to visit Europe again too after all this lockdown and travel restrictions are off, and more
do it.
Yeah, for sure. More traveling down the road. But I want to get us back to podcasting and how myself and Martin connected. So we connected on the Anchor Facebook group, which is for podcasters out there that have a podcast via that anchor.fm. But Martin over here, he's killing it with his newest podcast. So I want I would like Martin to share his expertise and things that he's learned from, doing 7 episodes to date and more to come, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it'd be great for you to share your tips and tricks on how to, improve episodes if you have a podcast and things like that.
Sure thing. Yeah, I think the most important thing to know is that you have to be consistent in everything you do. Um, at first, if you decide to go podcasting, you're very excited and you think, "Wow, I'm on this, in this flow of talking and talking and getting things done." But yeah, you're starting to grow a little audience, but at some point in your podcasting career, yeah, it's going to be a burden. It's going to be a drag, and you have to keep it interesting for yourself, and you know, work up the will to go on. And so yeah, for us, we don't have a very hard concept. Because we just start talking and hit record, and that's it. But for you, I think for you as well, because you have a very specific niche for your podcast. You have the daily grind for motivation, and you need to find the speakers and the guests. People tend to forget that or think lightly of it, but it's hard work, really, and especially if you want to do something with the audio quality later on. And I'm very picky about that, and I want it to be good, and maybe cut out a few because I tend to use a lot of um, so you want it to be top notch, really, and so yeah, you have to be consistent, and if you know in advance you can't make it every week, you should choose a different frequency of posting. Really, some people post bi-monthly, and there's an audience for that. Some people post weekly. There's an audience for that. I don't know how much you post. I think it's once a week. Yeah, that's a lot of work, especially if preparing and all that. So kudos to you for keeping it up, because you're in 40 weeks now, something like that.
Yeah, this is oh my gosh, I'm forgetting what episode we're at.
Yeah, something like that. I
43, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Episode 43, 43 weeks of podcasting. That it's quite an achievement, and people tend to forget that. They just listen to what you say and they think, they think nothing of it, but it's actually a lot of work to get these things online. And for us, it's just simply hitting record, and posting it a few hours later after me, copy and pasting in the show music, which we also made ourselves. So yeah, you have to find a proper frequency for yourself, which you can stick to, because like I said multiple times already, it's a lot of work, and at first you're all excited about it, and you get your friends involved and everyone around you and your family, and you say, look, I made this podcast, and your first episode is going to be fantastic and everybody loves it. But after one episode, they're going to decide whether it's for them or not. So your audience is going to drop, and don't be fazed by it. Really, you have to keep it up and just keep going, because you're going to see a drop after the first episode. Our first episode is still the best episode ever, because it's been played for almost 300 times, and the rest around 140 or 150 times. So yeah, you have to keep up your enthusiasm, really, and for you, because you run a lot of hosts. You run a lot of guests. You have a lot of guests, so you have to invite the guests, prepare them, and so you really don't think it's just sitting down and hit record, because it's a lot more than that. You need to advertise, which we did quite well, and that's the third point. You have to advertise like mad, because ours was because we were so locally oriented, there wasn't much going on locally. So we we hit the spot, you know. We filled the gap. Like there wasn't much going on in our little town. So we posted this online, and we shared it with all our friends. I happen to have some 800 friends on Facebook, so I got them involved. My co-host also has quite a large following because he's a wedding photographer, and he has all these couples who follow him, and all of these photo enthusiasts. And yeah, he's right in the center of the community because he does family shoots and all that. So he gets a lot of families involved as well. So yeah, so that's one point. But then after you post your podcast, people are going to forget about it, or not everyone is online at the same time. So you might think everybody will see my podcast. Well, they won't. And you need to repost it several times a week, and take snippets from it, or present it as an image, like some quotable things from this podcast. You can share them online and make people see, like, yeah, this is what was said in this podcast. If you want to know more, check it out. Here it is. And so that gives you another opportunity to post it. One thing we did was really funny. We just discussed people. Like, we just say, you know, I went to speak to our friend last week, and he was doing this and that. And then we have an opportunity to tag that person, and that piques their interest, of course. Like, oh, they're discussing me. What's going on? So they're going to listen to the episode. Even if you do it right at the end of the episode, they're going to listen to the entire episode to see, where am I? So, and you know, everybody wants to hear about themselves. So we just talk about people, or just mention them briefly, and they're just loving it. And especially since it's such friendly banter, they're bound to love it. I think, you know, what are these guys on about? It's just a collection of dad jokes and really stupid stuff. So
that's great. I love it. I think this is really good advice and tips for new podcasters out there. People are thinking about even starting their podcast, or currently have their own podcast and they want to improve it even more. Yeah, just in summary, so being consistent, having a really good audio quality, and also being able to advertise, market a ton. I definitely want to kudos to you on all your presence on Facebook and across other social media platforms, with the different that hit me I hit the nail on the head in regards to the different images and putting the quotes and tagging people in. Also, could you explain a little bit more to you got in touch with local businesses? I think this is another good tip that we could share with our listeners out there. So you're able to partner with local businesses to help promote your podcast as well?
Of course, we already knew who we were going to mention in our podcast. So yeah, we selected them in advance, and we know, they speak Low Saxon as well, and they're familiar with the concept of banter and how this works in our language, right? So they love to hear that, and everybody can do it here. It's like the Irish say, what the Irish say about the gift of the gap. You know, it's just bantering. You know, this to and fro jousting game of making fun of each other in a friendly manner. And at one point, I think the first episode, we had one microphone, and we were, you know, really huddled around the microphone, bending into each other's auras, really. And we said we could do with a second microphone, and someone picked it up and he said, I'm going to sponsor your microphone. Oh, fantastic. So a week later, we had two microphones. But then we mentioned something about the acoustics in the room, like they were really bad, and, you know, the sound bouncing off the walls and all that. And I'm very particular about acoustics in a room. So he said, yeah, we need a sponsor for that. And whoa, fantastic. And at one point we said like, we could do with some nice pie or something like that. And one local bakery said, all right, you'll have some pie from us. And that's how the ball got rolling. And there was this a print shop, and they said, I'll print some stickers for you with your logo on it. And we mentioned that, and some other local business said, all right, I'll sponsor the stickers for you, I'll pay him for you so I can be on your show. And that's how the ball got rolling. And at some point, I think in the previous episode, so not the seventh, but the sixth, we said there was something going on in the city center here, in the town center. They're redecorating it, and there's been a local architect who's been doing that. So we mentioned him, and we said, you're doing a great job. Or at first we made some banter like, who is he to decide what our city's going to look like? And then he said, oh no, we should be positive about him because he might sponsor us. And we tagged him, and I think about a day later he said, all right, I'm going to sponsor you. You're going to have 150 euros for me. So that's how that works over here. But I can't say it will work over there. But yeah, that's everybody loves banter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so too. I think it's great, and like what you mentioned before, like people like when they hear their own name or a shout out on podcasting, or even across any social media. If you tag someone in a Facebook post or tag them in the Instagram, Twitter, etc., etc. But I think those are really great, and you have to be flexible. So like you have these new creative ideas that come about, or people respond back to you. You have to be open to change, and somehow these actually work out for the better. Lots of great stories to tell too, and it sounds like things are really going well with like those unique different tags or mentions with businesses. And then you mentioned earlier with doing the photo shoot via drone with the elderly residents. I think these are really creative ideas that you haven't, like, from like if you just look in podcasting in general from initial standpoint, you wouldn't think of those at the beginning, but these crazy creative ideas are awesome.
Yeah, and I really have my co-host to thank for that, because he's really creative with these kinds of things. At one point, I love what he did, because he had little pencils made with his business name on it. Who wants a pencil? But he lost them all somehow, and at one point he took them to, I don't know how it works over there, but do you have like IKEA stores? And one of the most striking things about the IKEA store is that you can get these little pencils, like with IKEA on them, so you can mark down what kind of stuff you'd like to order later on. And he just dropped his pencils in these boxes in between the IKEA pencils, and that was great guerrilla marketing. That's fantastic. And he just has all these kinds of stupid things with these pencils. He even made a little animation with these pencils, like he told a little story and he recorded it, and he arranged his pencils like they were some sort of airplane, and like they were going on a holiday and all this stupid stuff. And people just watched that. People will watch anything, and they say, "Oh, you're right. Just give me a pencil." Yeah, I love him, and it really took off. It's like, oh yeah, he's the guy from the pencils, and people start to recognize him for it. That's just fantastic. Then, who would have thought?
Yeah, exactly. That's great. I love the unique ideas. These are great. Gets the blood flowing. Me brainstorming. Our listeners out there, that's how different things, just not just podcasting, but technology, different products and services, just how things explode. You think of one idea, it just leads to another, and snowball effect here and there. And
exactly.
Yeah. So I guess outside of podcasting, I know we talked a ton on podcasting, but what do you like to do outside of podcasting?
Outside of podcasting, me and my co-host, we know each other through music. I've been in a marching band. I know that's not a very cool thing in America generally, but over here it is. I play the drums, and he's a brass player. He started out on trumpet and now he's on bass. on sousaphone, and we're in this party band together, and we've been making music together for as long as we've known each other. So, yeah, that's really great. So I love to make music. I think when I was 15 years old, I said I want to be able to play the guitar. So I bought a guitar and basically taught myself to play it a bit. So I still approach it as if it's a drum. So I'm not really good at the finger picking styles, but I know how to do the strumming stuff. So yeah. So, and of course, since I do a lot of work on low Saxon, and you want to use everything I do, I sort of dedicate to the preservation and the promotion of low Saxon. So I started to write low Saxon songs. That took off. People started to know about it, and yeah, I sort of became known for singing and making low Saxon music. So there's not much going for there's not much out there when it comes to low Saxon, and yeah, so it's an easy market in a sense.
Great. Yeah, no, if I search low Saxon, it probably comes up with your name a ton. No, I feel like
Probably.
you're probably one of the all-stars out there. But yeah, I guess with currently with the situations going on, how has like COVID affected your daily grind?
Well, as I said, I'm a copywriter by profession, and yeah, until now, I think about one or two of my clients have said, "Well, we'll just hold off things until the COVID, subsides and all that." But writing, I can write from any place around the world as long as I have Wi-Fi connection. So that basically means I'm at home a lot. So yeah, business-wise, I don't think I've had a lot of trouble from COVID just yet. I mean, it is a little quieter than usually, but I still have a lot to do. So I think March actually was one of my best months so far as a copywriter. So I've really had a few good months. So no complaining from me. And yeah, I run this. I rent this little office space in a co-working space, and well, everyone's at home, so I can go there whenever I want. And my wife is a freelancer as well, so we're cooped up in here together. And she's upstairs at the moment in my office, and yeah, well, we're doing great. Yeah, no problems there.
Thanks. That's good to hear. I guess, yeah, can you share with our American listeners, like, what's the situation over by you, or what's, like, the latest and the update with COVID? Are you guys close to being reopening or things like that? We've been on lockdown as well since March.
Yeah, we're in a sort of lockdown. We can still go out as long as we keep a safe distance. I know that up in Sweden, they don't do anything about it. They just go on as usual, and there's some critiques about that as well. But my parents, they're in the risky age, like between 70 and 80 years old. So we restrict our visits to them. But we as youngsters, we're fit and healthy, and we don't have much to fear. So we restrict our visits, our social visits. But then again, my co-host comes over every week. So, and yeah, his wife is a nurse. So yeah, people are starting to protest. They're starting to protest a little bit, but not as fierce as over there, because we watch the news as well. So yeah, not as fierce as with you, but I think it's because we've been able to go out a bit. So not in social places. Restaurants have closed down, and public life has come to a halt. But I think the latest was that it's reopening as of June, I think. Slowly, gradually, and I've had a haircut last week, which was very nice. Yes, because it was awful. I think the whole screen would be filled with hair. But yeah, it's acceptable now.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we're hoping to get in Chicago or Midwest area too. We're hoping to slowly open up starting in June as well, or like a rolling,
Mm-hmm.
20 like increase in percentage over weeks. Essentially, we have different phases.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've had to add to my resume as a hairstylist. I've cut my own hair as well as a few other people.
You're a hairstylist.
Yeah, just during this time,
All right.
I watched some YouTube videos to help with grooming because I had a few people, some of my family reach out to me because since obviously the salons are closed to help cut their hair. So I was like, sure, I'll learn how to do this. It's not that hard. So yeah, I just watched some few videos, so I'm okay. But I feel for those people who are out there that live by themselves, they probably are due for a haircut soon. So I'm hoping
Mm-hmm.
places open up in the next few weeks. And again, restaurants and things, you can only do carry out or order beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think we're almost getting to a point where we'll slowly be able to open up and visit these
Mm-hmm.
small businesses and local restaurants and help support them coming in person during this time and
Yep.
everything. So interesting.
Yeah, I really must commend our local entrepreneurs, the restaurant keepers, and all that, because they've proven to be very resilient when it comes to that. And yeah, we've done a lot of takeouts. I know that's quite usual in the US, but over here it isn't. We tend to cook every day ourselves, cut everything ourselves, fresh food, and well, to support them, we also do takeaways and all that. So and they just come around and leave it at our doorstep and use the internet to pay for them. So we're actually pretty. I think we're pretty lucky to be living in these days because we have so much privileges that if this happened like 50 years ago, it would be so much more trouble for the world. So I think in a way we're lucky that it is happening now.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Yeah, really good point there with looking back versus what we're currently living in and everything. I know besides your podcast, do you have to share with listeners just other maybe like books or other podcasts or things that you follow to help motivate them as well?
I'm not much of a book reader. I know I should be, and I've read a lot of books, but the problem is I tend to forget them because it's one of the things my wife always complains about. You remember we watched that film when this and that happened, and I'm like, no, I can't recall. Yeah, but that said, I know you're a runner. And I go for a run myself occasionally. And when I go running, I love to listen to the BBC podcasts, and I love to have a laugh. So I usually listen to the comedy section. And one of the things I really loved was the Dead Ringers. And it's a bit of a satirical show on the latest news. And they do a fantastic Trump impression. And it's wonderful. So yeah, people can see me jogging around the streets with a grin on my face, and yeah, it's lovely. Sometimes even laughing out loud because British humor is unequaled, in my opinion. I love absurd humor.
That's great. Yeah, I like it for sure. I guess as we're getting to a close, you talked about your daily schedule. What's on your daily grind in the upcoming weeks later this year?
Well, as I said, I'm a copywriter. I worked on a beautiful magazine, which came on my path, coincidentally, but it's really taken off. But I like to do other things as well. As I said, I'm a musician. I do arts. If you look on my Instagram, you'll see some caricatures and some drawings of buildings as well, which I love to do occasionally. And I'd like to make put some more effort in making money from my low Saxon efforts, which has been voluntarily up until now. It hasn't earned me one penny. But build up some extra revenue from that. So I'm thinking about starting the first online Low Saxon language course, which needs a lot of work. So that's what I'll be working on the coming months. And this actually is the first time I've said that. So yeah, you have a scoop there, and it really makes me, it gives me some extra drive to actually do it. So yeah.
That's great. Yeah, I love the teaser. We're gonna have to get you back on the daily grind for an update down the road.
Yeah, in a year from now, there's thousands of people speaking Low Saxon. So
yeah, that's great. And you're very talented. And you have a wide skill set in regards to arts, music, writing, podcasting, copywriting, etc. That's really great. I feel like each piece or each strength that you have in these areas helps compile, and you can create great content in your different mediums. That's really good fit.
Yeah, and being a freelancer is really given me the opportunity to think about these things and think, what do I actually want? Do I want to be a copywriter for the rest of my life? Well, maybe I will, but it's only a part of me. And when I made music, people said to me, "Well, you should do more with that." And when I did my drawings, people said you should do a little extra with that. And I've actually sold a few of my drawings already. So I got my hopes up. So yeah, there we go.
Yeah, there we go. Keep it coming. I like it. Really, really great stuff there, Martin. Do you have a word of the day to motivate our listeners out there?
Yeah, it's actually a Low Saxon quote, and it's "Doe wat je weet wat er leu, kan je toch," and it means do whatever you will, do what you will, because people will talk anyway. So the world is at your feet. Go for it.
I like it. I think that's really fitting, and you're ending on a really good quote in regards to do something that you're passionate about and what
exactly
you enjoy doing. I think that's really important. That's what we preach here on the Daily Grind. Really great stuff. Martin, if our listeners want to get in touch with you, if they want to follow you, how can they do so? Can you share with us?
I'm all over the internet, so yeah. The only problem is my last name, which we started off with. So it's fitting we come full circle. You can find me on Instagram, on Twitter. My first podcast is Veldspråk, which is spelled WEARLDSPROAKE. So Veldspråk, world speak. And the other one is Watata, which is WATATA.nl from the Netherlands. So yeah, if you want to reach out, by all means do. If you want to know more, please contact me, because I love that.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Martin. We'll for sure put his contact info as well as his podcast info in today's show notes. And just want to say thanks again for tuning in today's episode, and a big thank you for Martin for being on our podcast. When it comes to sharing my story, be sure to follow the Daily Grind at KJF Daily Grind on Instagram, and me, your host, at Kelly J. Lefty on Instagram or Twitter. Make sure to go to our podcast network website, ambiguouspodcastsolutions.com, for more content such as You Mad Bro, the Sam Bustle podcast, and GDP, Goal Driven Professionals. Listen on Google, Stitcher, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. Until next time, my name is Kelly Johnson, and have a great day.
Thank you very much.